Hi, I'm Bob Dixon. Welcome to the Leader's Edge Hot Takes edition of the Five Eagles Insight Podcast. For over 3 decades, I served in the military as an engineer and as a strategist, and I learned a few things about leadership. We know that it goes beyond theory. It's about real-world application. So in this series, sponsored by Five Eagles Leadership, we feature industry leaders and share their leadership journeys with you. My mission's simple. It's to help you become the best leader you can be. Now, if that sounds like something you're interested in, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to be considered as a guest in upcoming episodes, please go to 5eaglesleadership.com/interview and apply today. Now, let's get started.
Welcome back to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Marisa McClure, and joining me today is Ariel Schur from New York City. Ariel is the founder and CEO of ABS Staffing Solutions. Welcome, Ariel. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's get started. I want to hear a little bit more about your business. So to get us started, give us a quick overview of what your business does, and then also a little bit about why you got into it.
Sure. Well, I have a recruiting firm that I started. Now it's, oh my gosh, in 2013. I can't even believe it. It's crazy. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
I got into this business in a very random, roundabout way. It was never something I went to school or thought even envisioned myself doing. Basically, I was a psych major and was doing psychotherapy and had a private practice and went to an agency at the time looking to kind of find something to supplement my private practice because it can be isolating. It's one-on-one. And I just looked, I don't even think it was online at the time because I don't even think the internet was as robust as it is now. So I went to, I had talked to people and got some referrals about different agencies to go to. And I went to one thinking I was looking for, some sort of part-time job. And while I was in the waiting room, the owner of that company at the time looked at my resume. He's like, "Why are you here?" I'm like, "To get a job, obviously. Like, why else would I be in the waiting room?" He's like, "Come with me." And he brought me to the conference room. And he's like, "I need someone like you. Would you have any interest in recruiting and doing sales?" And I had never thought about it. And I had actually, one of my best friends from high school was in the recruiting industry and had been working at Monster at the time. And he literally offered me a job on the spot, but was like, "I need to know in the next day or two because I need to fill this position." And I remember leaving and I called her. I'm like, "Colleen, what do you think?" She's like, "Go for it. Why not?" She's like, "You love people. You like helping people." She's like, "It's a great synergy of your interests and talents." And I was like, "Okay." And quite frankly, the money was, a lot more than any other job I was looking at. So I said, I went for it. And I worked there for 9 years and then loved it, but realized there were a lot of things that we did at that firm that I felt like I wanted to do different and weren't reflective of who I was and how I would want to treat clients and candidates. And I decided to go off on my own. And I had some people at my old firm that wanted to come with me and literally opened my doors, went to a WeWork, formed my LLC.
Okay.
And here I am.
Wow, that's a great story. And I think it's, shows that things can change on a dime sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you go in thinking you're looking for one thing, and then this opportunity just falls in your lap. So that's...
And I think being receptive to that, and, a lot of times we kind of have a vision of what we think our career will be or our life, but, I think being open to new experiences and knowing that most people do try different things and, have different careers and, embracing that and being open to different opportunities as they emerge.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of just making the most of all these different opportunities. And I was in the military, but my career path was not sort of the standard career path.
Hmm.
I went pretty sideways a couple of times, and looking back, I think I'm so appreciative of those opportunities because it made me a more well-rounded leader and everything else. And I think as long as you have a positive attitude about it, even if you realize maybe it wasn't quite the right thing for you, there's still something to
Oh,
gain.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And learning from all your experiences is key. And, I'm a big proponent of that. And especially, mistakes and failures, we often learn the most from.
Yeah. We're going to circle back to that. So, that thought. So, what would you say is the biggest problem that you see in your industry, and how are you helping to solve that for yourself and for your clients?
So the biggest challenge since COVID has been really people not wanting to be in the office, and having very high, somewhat unrealistic expectations pertaining to what they're seeking in a job.
Mm.
And, it's interesting because pre-COVID, you would never even think about not being in an office 5 days a week,
Yes.
and suddenly post-COVID, like the thought of being in an office 5 days a week and that expectation was suddenly outlandish for people. And especially newer grads or people who had only had their prior experience being in the COVID world
Mm-hmm.
and working remotely and having that flexibility, then, you know, the contrast was completely unacceptable and something they weren't seeking. And they only wanted to either be remote or have some sort of hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
And so, reframing things for them and having them recognize and, listen, there's a lot of jobs that are still have a hybrid, but a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
especially I think when you're new to a company and for younger people, there's a real value and importance of being in person with people.
Yes.
And so often, you know, we'll be sourcing candidates and, you know, they'll say, nope, that's a deal breaker. I will not be in 5 days a week, no matter what the salary is. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
you know, that's been, and it's usually the younger generation. Another challenge with, I find a lot of the younger generation are these, titles that they're seeking and putting
Interesting.
so much emphasis on that even over their salary,
Hmm.
where they would rather have a certain title that's more meaningful for them. And I've often probed because I'm like, you can call me whatever you want. If you're going to pay me, you know, $500,000 a year, like call me, servant. I don't really care,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like
Right.
to me, that's not even like title isn't meaningful, but for them, and I think growing up in this world of social media and how
Yeah.
everything is about labels and, so much of their mindset. And I even see it with my own children, where they do these hauls where everything is like their outfits and saying what they're wearing. And,
Right.
it's just been ingrained in them. And that has, translated also in the workforce for them. And so that in conjunction with like wanting this flexibility and having these truly unrealistic expectations of what, working is, or they'll say, I don't want to work that hard, and they'll say that to me. And I'm like, it's a
That's
job. What
amazing.
do you, like, I can't even fathom when I started out wherever saying like on an interview, I don't want to work that hard. Like, that's not even like,
Right.
but it's like the norm now and it's acceptable. And it's like, oh, well, I go to this workout class, in the afternoon and I really need to be able to maintain that. And so I need a job that will enable me that flexibility. And those are their priorities now. It's
Yeah.
it's fascinating. And like I
Yeah.
would have thought, especially in New York after COVID, like the younger people would have been psyched to be in an office because, the living quarters, especially in New York, tend to be smaller. But nope,
Right.
they
Yeah.
they were like very comfortable, like in their, post COVID, still wanting to kind of have that freedom and flexibility.
Whew, those are some tough challenges to solve there, and
Yeah.
I can see where it can be hard to really understand like where people are coming from with some of that, and you know, um, yeah, it makes me understand better why we've had some recruiting issues in the military because there was no, this is my preference. I want to do this. I don't want to work that hard.
Yeah, no,
These were not, these were not part of our
it's
mindset
different.
at all.
Totally. It's a different world. And I think it will begin to shift again. And I think as more companies are mandating more in
Yeah,
person and
it
that
is starting to
becomes,
speak fast.
and that
Yeah,
becomes more of the norm again, I do feel like we'll have a shift, but this time is still like
right.
readjusting and reframing things. And also part of my job too is, helping candidates and reframe it and keep it in perspective. Like,
Hmm.
and there's also the other big thing is often like this seeking unlimited PTO time.
Mm,
And,
yeah,
they got used to that. But realistically, like, no one, like, even if someone says you have unlimited PTO time, like, if you take advantage of that, then you're going to lose your job.
right,
So it's like
right.
not understanding, like, you know, having 2 weeks plus having 5, 6 sick days that are mandated, in New
Hmm.
York and most states, like
Yeah.
that's a good amount of time. And I even see online, like there's ways to like, if you take this day off in conjunction with like this holiday, you'll end up expanding your paid time off. And, you know, you can leverage that in a whole new way. But people just
Hmm.
like, if they don't hear unlimited PTO time, which again, I have to explain, like realistically, your employer might say that, but if you're really taking advantage of unlimited PTO time, I can't imagine you're going to be having a job still.
Right. If you're coming to work 1 day a week, that's not
Yeah.
gonna work. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So who is your ideal client? And what are some of the outcomes they can expect from working with you?
So an ideal client is very clear in their communication style with us in terms of coming to us with a job description, um, salary range. Now in New York State, you have to disclose upfront what
Mm-hmm.
the salary is. And you can no longer ask a candidate what they're making. So
Okay.
it's a real shift. When I started, it used to be like you could ask someone, how much are you currently making? You could even ask for proof. And now
Oh, wow.
that's no longer the case. You can ask, what are you seeking in terms of compensation? But
Mm-hmm.
they also legally have to be able to know what the range is. And so that's actually been another interesting challenge. That's something that if I have a client, the ideal client comes to me with a realistic range, right? Because sometimes the way they get around having to list what the range is like a range of 80 to 280, right? So just to kind of meet that, but then that's not really helpful for me. And I need to know realistically, like, what are you looking to pay? And, like the key to any relationship, having open and honest communication is key.
Yeah.
So I always preface that to a client. And, you know, we have to be a team. We have to work together. You know, Obviously, as we get to know each other, you learn. And so I, especially in the beginning, will preface, please don't hold back. Tell me all of your feedback after interviews. I like to check in with both the candidate and the client to hear exactly what their thoughts were so we can learn from it,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then be able to apply that information. And, the other thing is like entrusting us, right? Because you know, our job, and sometimes some clients invariably need to see a certain number of people, no matter like if the first person is perfect and we know they're perfect, but they're still have this angst about like, oh, just accepting the first person, right?
Right.
Once clients have worked with me and they know and they trust us, then they know that like if I say to them, this is it, this is your person, and they have cultivated that trust in us, it goes a lot easier.
Yeah.
um, but I get it. And just like anything, I often make parallels to dating and interviewing and the whole process because
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities. But, some people need to go on multiple dates before they say, like, this is the one. or want to make a commitment, and some people know right away and are comfortable with that. So, ideally the person trusts us, gives us open communication, is timely in their responses too, because that can really derail and delay the process if like we have a momentum going and
Mhm.
we have the candidate on board and then there's a lag time, you know, they're either interviewing other places too, or
Right.
it, kind of takes that excitement out or the wind out of the sails. And then it really adds a whole other layer and challenge to us to keep people on board and interested, especially if we don't know what's going on their end, right? So if they communicate and say, listen, I had one client who realized I'm going to be going away, but in order to keep the process going, here's a project I want the candidates to do, and let's, have this and have a realistic timeline. That's so helpful, versus going silent or us not knowing and then candidates following up and then it reflects poorly on us and we feel bad and then we don't want to lose them, but we understand that they have to keep looking or they've gotten another offer and we have to, we're struggling to get that feedback from our client. So those are really the challenges. And so when we have someone who is responsive, who's clear, who can tell us right away the feedback, and we have that constant open dialogue and communication, that's an ideal client.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I was thinking earlier today that job searching and online dating are very similar. And frankly, I
Yeah,
hate both.
yeah, I
So,
agree. Yeah.
I think you're
I
right
mean,
on.
you have to like embrace it and just accept it for what it is and know what it is going
Yeah.
in. And so
And,
much of like anything is a
yeah.
mindset, right? So
And
if
I
you're
think
like,
being open and honest about who you are and what you're looking for, that's the key to
yeah,
both, right? Yeah.
exactly.
No,
And knowing
that's
that and
great.
knowing who you are as a person and individual and
Yeah.
learning from your past experiences, whether it's dating or jobs. I always tell people, you know, come up with your ideals and, look at your past jobs or relationships and what worked, what didn't, and what would you
Right.
be seeking in the future.
Yep.
And being aware of that when you interview too is important.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. So, what would you say makes you unique in how you support your clients?
I think, we really take an individual approach. It's not a cookie cutter. It's
Mm.
not one size fits all. We're very much, quality over quantity, really taking time to understand who our client is, their culture, what they're seeking, and also our candidates. And really, the majority of both clients and candidates are referrals and word of mouth, and really, where that emanates from is having a positive experience with us. And so when someone asks what our terms are, it really, first I need to understand what you're seeking, and what the job is and what the requirements are. And I take all of that into account and I don't just have like a one size fits all model. It's really about the individual. And, you know, there's always things that, we can take into account and work with them. And I think that's important. And it's about building relationships that people want to come back to us or refer us. And, there's a lot of options in the space, like most. And so, really giving that quality service,
Yeah.
people can reach us literally 24/7. Where someone's always answering my phones or responding. And that's, another thing. Like, you know, we're always available, accessible, and, you know, make it a priority to respond and, give realistic expectations of what to expect in the process.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like a real personal touch. So, that's important. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. So, where do you see the recruiting industry going in the next 5 to 10 years? I think you've already kind of talked about a little bit of kind of moving away from all those fully remote jobs. In addition to that, is there anything else you see coming, and how are you staying on top of it?
I mean, obviously, AI is a big
Mm.
component and variable and changing all industries.
Yes, I
I
agree.
think that, in terms of, I still believe and like to have that personal touch with people. I still, whether it's a candidate or a client, I'd like for their experience to be positive, that they've learned something. And so that's something I take pride in, and really, recognizing, yes, AI can do certain things, but there's still that human touch. But I do think that a lot of, recruiting firms are filtering with AI and using it to, look at resumes, and to even, I even get bombarded all the time with like these platforms that can do interviews and do write-ups for you
Oh,
and
wow.
streamline the process. And,
Mhm.
you know, there's some value add, obviously, but it's also a little disarming and scary to me, because I still, you know, I use an example because my daughter and I were shopping the other day, and we were talking about, chat GPT, and writing isn't a strength of hers. She likes math better. And I was recounting when I was growing up how calculators, really, you couldn't even use them at school, right? Like they
Right.
were kind of like, and yet now we all have calculators and it is permissible. And I was like, I wonder if the same will yield true with like a chat GPT. Will that,
Mm.
change how people do their writing? But there's still something to be said. And I still believe, like, even when you have a lot of automated processes to double check things,
Yeah.
and we went to a store and they rang it up, through the computer system. And I looked at the bill and it seemed off. And she was like, "Come on, Mom, let's go." I'm like, "No, honey, let me double check." And she's like, "No, it was from the computer. Let's go." I'm like, there can still be, who knows what the error, there's glitches, things emerge. And sure enough, they, put in the wrong code or something and mischarged me. And it was a good reminder and a lesson for her that even when things are kind of automated, it's important to kind of double check things. And I think, that yields true, but I think you have to stay current. I think you need to, in all industries, you know, be part of groups, network, and,
Yeah.
make sure that you are aware of the changes that are invariably happening with technology these days.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I think with AI, I like the idea of it being an enhancement, right? And not
Yes.
taking the place of everything, because
Yeah.
you need that human element to things. But it can help with a lot of different things. And
Well,
so I think
menial
it's kind
tasks
of
and
that,
things that are just, busy work, let's say, or, you
right?
know, it can streamline things
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
make.
All right. Okay, so we're circling back now. You mentioned learning from mistakes or failures. So, what would you say is the biggest mistake or failure that or challenge that you've had thus far, and how have you used that to help shape how you do business?
I mean, there's definitely been a few. I'm not going to, sugarcoat it. One of the early things that happened to me was one of the companies I was working with went bankrupt, and they owed me a lot of money.
Ooh,
And in addition to that, all of a sudden I had the company come to me with a clawback, because I had been paid. They had paid me some of my invoices
okay.
that were part of, I never even knew what a clawback was. I'm like, but I was owed that money. What do you mean you can claw it back and take it? They're like,
Yeah.
no, it has to go in this pool, because there's a lot of vendors that they owe money to. And we have to, I still
Oh,
to this day
wow.
am not fully clear how they discern and disseminate it. But, it was a valuable lesson on multiple fronts. One is to really stay on top of receivables.
Yeah.
Now I don't let anything go past, a certain, usually my terms are either 30 days, 60 or 90. And I really stay on top of the collections and make sure that, it doesn't go too far past. I do credit checks with new clients. I also have built in a retainer with new clients, because I need to, make sure I'm covered, because
Sure.
that was a big hit and a big learning lesson. And this was a big non-for-profit, actually, that no one, that had been around forever. So you just
Oh, wow.
never
So
know. But
established. Yeah.
the bills were piling up, and it never even dawned on me that, like, they could go bankrupt or declare bankruptcy, and that I would have that loss.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that
and
was,
when you're taking the chance and going out on your own and starting your own business, it's scary and there's a lot of challenges. And I'm sure that
oh
was
yes,
really, yeah, definitely a big lesson learned for you, no doubt.
yes. But I have built in different safeguards subsequently to, as much as possible, learn from that and try to implement things to avoid that from reoccurring.
Yeah. Whew, yeah, that's a good lesson. All right, so what would you say is the next area of growth for you or for your business?
I think one area that I've recently realized is an area I could definitely cultivate is having kind of a coaching side. So a lot of times, a lot of people refer candidates to me, and candidly, it's not really an issue finding candidates. There's always people looking for work.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized and recognized that even if I don't have a job for some of these candidates, I can help them. And I recently had an experience where my daughter was applying to college, and somebody we were working with came to me and she's like, my brother has been out of work for 2 years. He's struggling. Would you be able to help him? And he was in the IT field, and that's one area that I don't really delve into. I said, but I'm happy to work with him and see how I can help him. And there were so many baseline things from his resume to just helping him rewrite it, to tailor it to different jobs, to
Right.
coaching him through the interviewing process, to just really helping him and holding his hand. And by the end of working with me for a few months, he ended up having 3 different job offers and landing a job. And it was little tweaks, right? But it really also dawned on me that that's an area that is, a lot of these things, because I deal with it every day, are so common and baseline. But for someone who doesn't have that experience, it can be daunting and scary. And
Yes.
just everything from helping them, like, with their confidence, with what to wear,
Yeah.
from, every little detail. And, you know, helping them kind of explore and understand what they're seeking and how to navigate the process. So that's kind of a subset to just the regular recruiting piece that, you know, I would like to kind of grow and cultivate.
Yeah, I love that, right? You can coach them not to say that they don't want to work that hard at their
Yeah,
interview.
no, I mean, there's so
Those
many,
are important
even if
points.
I don't have that job for them, I can help them and, teach them how and the best ways to navigate the challenging process of interviewing and looking for a job. And, you know, I mean, I can't tell you how many resumes the tenses are wrong, or they'll
Mm,
say, attention, graded attention to detail, yet there's so many details in their resume that are off. And I'm like, oh my gosh, do you
yes.
realize, like,
Yes, as
it's
someone who's been a hiring manager, I can definitely tell you if I find that something like that early on in a resume, I'm done with it and I move on to the next one.
Yeah. Or so many people will say, they've gone to different firms. No one's ever told me this. And I'm like, no one told you that if you're no longer working somewhere, it should be in the past tense, not present. They're like, no. I'm like, oh, okay. And if you're doing bullet points, make it consistent throughout, or stick with one, or
Yeah,
make sure things are aligned properly, like things that seem so common and baseline, but like,
right. But not for everyone. So
yeah,
yeah, it's a tough process. I mean, having been in the military for 24 years, when I got out and it was time to look for a job, even though I'd been a professional and a leader and a manager for decades, like it was challenging for me to figure out that whole process. And
yeah, no,
it's different environment from what I was used to, and I never had to apply for jobs before, so
yeah, no,
I was what to
100%.
do and where to go. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it can be challenging for folks for sure. So that's great. I love that for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so last question. How can people contact you, learn more about your business, if they want to work with you? What's the best way to find you?
Our website, which is www.absstaffingsolutions.com. So it's ABS and then staffing solutions, all one word,
Okay.
.com.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ariel, for
Oh,
being
thank
here.
you. My
Yeah.
pleasure.
And good
Likewise.
luck moving forward with
Thank you.
all
I
your
appreciate
endeavors.
it.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you.
take care.
You too.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Leader's Edge Hot Take Series. I hope you found today's insight meaningful, valuable, and that you're ready to put them into action. Now, if you enjoyed the episode and want to keep improving your leadership, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. I post new content every week, packed with strategies, tips, and real-life examples to help you lead with impact. And remember, great leadership isn't just about guiding others, it's about continuously growing yourself. If you'd like to be considered as a guest for upcoming episodes, please go to 5eaglesleadership.com/interview to apply today. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next episode. Be awesome.